Hi, I'm Bill Houghton, and today we're talking about the costs of surrogacy. Both what are the costs in different destinations worldwide, as well as what are the components of your surrogacy journey and how much do they cost, and what can you do to bring your costs down. So surrogacy costs vary widely around the world. The United States, which has become sort of an international hub, is also the most exorbitantly expensive spot in the world. A typical agency program in the US is going to cost about $150,000. Now there are some cheaper programs in the US, and I've seen programs for as little as $95,000 to $100,000, still agency programs. Those are typical programs that are away from the US coasts, US West Coast and California and Washington, Oregon. Those are the most expensive states, largely because there's an enormous amount of competition. A lot of people have seen the Kardashians on TV and they're going to California, which has been pushing the clinical costs and the costs of your surrogate up. Same thing is true in New York and in New England. If you go to a surrogacy program in the middle of the country, you're going to save a little bit of money. So around $100,000 in the middle of the country, around $150,000 on either coast. Now that is assuming that you're doing a basic agency program in the US, right? Where you're hiring an agent, he's going to manage the whole process for you. He's going to find your surrogate, he's going to manage all of the clinic appointments, he's going to oversee the pregnancy, etc. The other option is to do what we call an independent program. And an independent program saves money because there's basically no agent. So agents cost anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000, right, of that $150,000. And what they do is basically what I said. They find your surrogate for you, they manage her clinical appointments, they see her through the pregnancy, etc. But if you want to do that yourself and manage your surrogate directly, you can save the agency fee, basically cut anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 out of your budget. Not as easy as it sounds, and at some point we'll do another video basically on independent surrogacy programs and how that works. In addition to your program costs, your $150,000 or your $75,000 to $80,000 in the case of an indie program, what you should also include the cost of medications, which is going to be probably $5,000 to $10,000, and a cost for your egg donor. If you need an egg donor, and in the US, that's going to be an expensive proposition. An egg donor in the US is going to cost you anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 for a good egg donor from a donation agency, right? So all in all, in the US, very expensive. And what I like to say is sort of the old adage. If you have to ask how much, whether or not you can afford a surrogacy program in the US, chances are you can't really afford it because it's very, very expensive. And there's also really no guarantees that that price is going to be the price that you're going to find. Right? The American medical system is really convoluted, and it happens all the time that there are unexpected medical costs. And because insurance is all private and it's not very well regulated, additional medical complications during a pregnancy can really, really impact how much your final surrogacy journey is going to cost you. So compare that to programs overseas. And by the way, I should say that I work with a lot of programs in the US, and I have a couple that I really, really love, and I would love to, I'd love to bring clients there because I have a lot of faith in them. But if you are concerned about your surrogacy costs, right, then the US is going to be sort of a dangerous place to be playing because the costs are high and very unpredictable. Compare the US to other international destinations, and there are quite a few. Canada, which has become quite popular, is about $85,000 and that typically would include your egg donor. Greece is good if you're a European citizen because they have some laws that allow for European citizenship, and that's about $80,000 US dollars. Mexico, also about $80,000 US dollars. If you're considering a program in Colombia or Ukraine, you can expect about $50,000 for a surrogacy program, including your donor, including all of the extras. And then all the way down to places like Kenya, right? Developing countries where there's no legislation and no regulation can be very, very cheap. Kenya right now is about $45,000 for a surrogacy program, but you get sort of what you pay for. Why do these costs vary so much? And the answer is really twofold. One is the basic cost of living. Cost of living in the United States is high. The US generally is an expensive place to live. Compare Los Angeles to Kiev, right, which are two surrogacy destinations, right, two surrogacy hubs worldwide. The cost of living in California, in Los Angeles, is 300 times higher than in Kiev. And that means that your surrogate, who is earning $15,000 in Kiev, is actually making the same amount in terms of value as a surrogate earning $45,000 in Los Angeles. So for the exact same service, right, for the exact same woman who's providing the exact same benefit to you, you are basically paying 1/3 if you go to a program overseas in Kiev. The other reason why surrogacy costs are lower overseas is just the cost of medical care. And Americans love to think that their medical care system is the best in the world. And in general, the best clinics in the US are in fact the best clinics worldwide. But the typical clinic in the US is really not that much better than the typical clinic overseas. And typically, clinics overseas are going to be covered under national medical care, right? The US has a privatized medical care system. You have to buy insurance through a provider and pay out of pocket to your hospital or to your clinic. That pushes the cost of your surrogacy journey way up. If you were to have a baby in Kiev, right? If you were just to get pregnant and you go to a maternity hospital and you deliver your baby, you can walk out 3 days later with a healthy baby and basically pay nothing. If you do the same thing in California, you are likely to have to pay $5,000 to $10,000 out of pocket if you have insurance. If you don't have insurance, you can expect to pay far more than that, or you're going to have to go on some sort of government assistance and then have the government pay for that, right? So the combination of the lower cost of living overseas and the national health care overseas that typically covers your pregnancy is a big reason why going overseas for surrogacy is a lot less expensive than in the US. So what goes into your cost of surrogacy, into that $150,000 budget, right? Well, let's assume for a moment that you're in the US. The biggest cost is going to be your surrogate herself, right? And this is actually true worldwide. But in the US, a typical surrogate is going to cost you about $50,000, right? Now, $35,000 of that is what we would call a base salary, and that is how much she gets paid just for getting pregnant and delivering your baby. But that is not the total of her salary, right? The total of her package. Her compensation package includes a lot of benefits that you should always take into consideration. And by the way, if you're thinking about finding your own surrogate and doing an independent surrogacy journey, and you have someone who's interested in becoming a surrogate, you're going to have to provide these benefits to her as well. So keep this in mind. In addition to her base pay, the surrogate is going to be getting a monthly allowance, and this could be anywhere from $200 to $300 a month during the pregnancy, right? Just to cover the costs of being pregnant. Every time your surrogate then starts a cycle, whenever she starts taking medications, she's going to be asked to receive, say, $1,000 for what we would call a start meds fee. Right? Now your surrogate, remember, when she becomes pregnant, before she becomes pregnant, she has to go through a lot of fertility treatments. So that means that she's going to start a protocol with daily hormone injections, right? And then she's going to go through an embryo transfer, which is in itself a pretty invasive procedure, right? So Anytime she goes through one of those procedures, she's expected to get some small compensation. Maybe it's $1,000, maybe it's $1,500, right? So that's a start med fee, embryo transfer fee. In addition, while she's pregnant, she's going to ask for maternity clothes, right? It's only reasonable, since she's going to need a whole new outfit, that you're going to spend $750 for a new set of maternity clothes. If she's expecting twins, it'll probably be even higher than that. Those are what we would call sort of the standard benefits. But there's also what we would call what if benefits, right? What if my surrogate comes down pregnant with twins? Well, in that case, your surrogacy contract is probably going to award her an additional $5,000 to $10,000 worth of compensation just for the difficulty of carrying twins pregnancy. Then there are medical complications, various medical complications like an ectopic pregnancy, right? Or something that results in a full or partial hysterectomy. Under the contract, likely she's entitled to anywhere from $9,000 to $15,000, right? In case of some sort of complication that involves a surgical procedure. But the worst, right? Or depending on how you look at it, the worst possible benefit that you could pay out of pocket, that could be added to your budget, would be if there's a complication during the pregnancy and she is entitled to bed rest. Now, bed rest, if your surrogate is working, means that she's not going to work, and so you are obligated to pay for her lost wages. If she has children, and all surrogates do, you should be paying for childcare to take care of her children while she is in bed rest. You almost certainly are going to have to provide some support for housekeeping. Since she can't take care of her house, she's going to have a keeper come in and clean the place and arrange things. All of those are reasonable benefits to expect with your surrogate, and all of those are going to push that basic compensation level from $35,000 up to $50,000. In addition to those costs, what goes into your surrogacy budget? Well, the clinical fees themselves are going to be anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000, depending on the clinic that you use. Like I said, clinics are going to be on the East or West Coast are going to be much higher, and I have seen clinics that are charging $25,000 to $30,000 for an IVF cycle and embryo transfers, which is on the high end. On the low end, they are probably around $10,000 to $15,000 if you find a good clinic somewhere in the American Midwest. In addition to your clinic fees, there's lawyer's fees, and expect about $10,000 in lawyer fees. That'll include the surrogate's contract and the pre-birth order or post-birth order and whatever other legal fees that are required. And then there's, like I said, there's agency fees that can range anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000. When you sign your surrogate, when you sign the contract with her, you're going to have to take over her medical insurance. Now, there is some insurance plans that surrogates may cover a surrogacy pregnancy, but I wouldn't count on it. About 10% only of surrogates will have some sort of medical insurance that will cover the pregnancy. So you should expect that you're going to have to pay for medical care or medical insurance, and that's going to cost you anywhere, well, let's just say $6,000 or $600 a month, right? $6,000 or more for the entire journey. Depending on when your surrogate gets pregnant or where she lives, that number could vary very widely. So where is the best place worldwide to have your surrogacy journey? Well, you may think that the best opportunity is just to go to some developing country where the cost of living is low and the price of your program is going to be very low, like Kenya. Kenya is $42,000, and it may make sense that let's just go to Kenya and save a lot of money. Well, not so fast. There are a lot of costs associated with poor quality. And remember that every time you do an embryo transfer, anytime you do a clinical procedure or have to repeat a clinical procedure, you have to pay additional money. So in the US or in Ukraine, where the costs are going to be higher, but you only need to do one set of clinical procedures. You only have to do one IVF cycle. You only have to do one embryo transfer. But in Kenya, where the clinics are not so good, you may have to do multiple embryo transfers and multiple IVF cycles and pay for multiple egg donors. So the same procedure in different countries can actually begin to raise the fee, raise your ultimate price depending on the quality of the clinic and how much difficulty you're going to have getting pregnant there. In addition to that, you should also consider the possible costs of any complications, any legal complications. Now remember, in a country like Kenya, in Guatemala, in Mexico, right? These are countries where there's no legal framework. And so the possibility of there being some sort of legal complication, some sort of legal snafu in your exit with your baby is quite high. And if that's the case, you could end up spending tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. You could end up spending weeks, if not months, overseas trying to bring your baby home. And those are all possible costs that you should consider as possible contingencies for your budget. What I always advise people is the best place to do a surrogacy program and the most affordable place to do a surrogacy program is a country where there is a strong legal framework in place, and that provides protections from you for both a medical perspective and also a legal and a cost perspective. So that is a quick summary of your surrogacy costs worldwide in the United States. I hope that was helpful. As always, if you have more questions or you want more details, you can come to the website at sensiblesurrogacy.com and look at the surrogacy guide. We have a searchable database of information about all aspects of your surrogacy journey, including a lot about costs and affordability. Or you can always contact us through info@sensiblesurrogacy.com. Send us an email, talk to one of our consultants, and we're happy to answer questions. And we're going to be having more videos coming up, including some webinars that'll address this issue. So look for those, and I hope to see you there.